hereby declare this to be an unlawful assembly.
Within the states, you and I, they'll vaccinate. They're preparing us for an all-out police state. Your world is going wild. Can't trust nothing but the love in your mama's eyes. Little time, salvation's in your smile. Just wish I could be alive to see the whole river rise.
Keep the shields up front if you can. Move the units down forward slowly. Attempt encirclement.
Finding all info warriors.
Speak loud, they try to silence. Withhold, they try.
Go to Pittsburgh now with video cameras.
Your world is going wild. Can't trust nothing but the love in your mama's eyes. Salvation's in your smile. Just wish I could be alive. See that whole river rise.
The Republic is falling right now.
World leaders arriving in Pittsburgh for the G20 summit are finding a city on lockdown.
The next moment, my eardrums were blasting, and as that happened, I basically turned around, saw about 40 riot police assisted by military.
They're closing in. Run! Get out! I told you!
This is what police say was what?
You must leave immediately.
This was the talk of the town in Hardin on Thursday. Mercedes decked out in the City of Hardin Police Department decals and driven by American Police Force members.
We're not disclosing the name of our parent company.
We know the guy that owns the company, but we've never seen this name before.
Excuse me, you just dropped a bomb on us. This is Red Dawn. Foreign mercenary group admitted driving around doing police work with Hardin Police next to their American Police Force logos. This is insane.
Passengers describe a terror attack and the arrest of a suspect.
So he's a controlled asset, and of course it's not a matter of failure to connect the dots. The FBI now has 5 versions of their story.
Can you add how they were already getting in Yemen? That's how
The scanning machines that we currently are beginning to deploy.
He told me to go through the scanner, and I said no. It's a real act of submission. They were involved in a cover-up. Kurt, this is huge.
The Federal Emergency Management Agency coordinates the federal government's role in preparing for, preventing, mitigating the effects of, responding to, and recovering from all domestic disasters, whether natural or man-made, including acts of terror. Its beginnings can be traced to disaster legislation passed in 1803 to provide assistance to a New Hampshire town following a fire. Following a string of natural disasters in the 60s and 70s, President Jimmy Carter signed Executive Order 12127 and merged nearly 10 federal agencies into what we now know as FEMA. In March 2003, FEMA joined 22 other federal agencies to become part of Homeland Security. In 2005, Hurricane Katrina hit the Gulf Coast and most notably the city of New Orleans. Federal and local authorities encouraged those who could not evacuate the city to go to the Superdome to ride out the storm, where there would be assistance to take care of them. This is how your government cares for you. This is a FEMA camp.
And that's all we're hearing about are the people in New Orleans. Those are the only ones that we're seeing on television are the scumbags who were left in New Orleans or who decided to stay in New Orleans, and they're getting all of the attention.
I have made 3 police state films. I have also, written books and news articles on the subject. And the problem is when you cover FEMA camps is there's so much evidence, so many congressional hearings, so many news articles, so many documents. The problem is knowing where to start. Executive orders. This is how they introduce you. See, they're introducing it all. They've denied they're building all this for all these decades. Now as they unveil it, they're putting their PR spin on it. So Executive Order 10,990 allows the government to take over all modes of transportation and control of highways and seaports. That's been reaffirmed under PDD 51, under the John Warner Defense Authorization Act and others. Executive Order 10,995 allows the government to seize and control the communication media. Executive Order 10,997 allows the government to take over all electrical power, gas, petroleum, fuels, and minerals. Executive Order 10,998 allows the government to seize all means of transportation, including personal cars, trucks, and vehicles of any kind, and total control over all highways, seaports, and waterways. Executive Order 10999 allows the government to take over all food resources and farms. Executive Order 11,000 allows the government to mobilize civilians into work brigades under government supervision. Executive Order 11,001 allows the government to take over all health, education, welfare functions. What's happening through the imploded economy that the foreign central banks are engineering? So they make you be beholden to the government. Designates the Postmaster General to operate a national registration of all persons. That goes on through the Selective Service. Executive Order 11003 allows the government to take over all airports, aircraft, including commercial aircraft. Remember when they shut down all flights after 9/11? Executive Order 11004 allows the Housing and Finance Authority to relocate communities, build new housing with public funds, designate areas to be abandoned, and establish new locations for populations. Remember Louisiana, Mississippi, Katrina?
Brownie, you're doing a heck of a job. The FEMA director is working 24
Executive Order 11005 allows the government to take over all railroads, inland waterways, and public storage facilities. Executive Order 11,051 specifies the responsibility of the Office of Emergency Planning and gives authorization to put all executive orders into effect in times of increased international tensions and economic or financial crises. Executive Order 11,310 grants authority to the Department of Justice to enforce the plans set out in executive orders, to institute industrial support, to establish judicial and legislative liaison, to control all aliens, to operate penal and correctional institutions, and to advise and assist the president. So that's your FEMA camps. Executive Order 11,049 assigns emergency preparedness functions to federal departments and agencies, consolidating 21 operational executive orders issued at 15-year period. Executive Order 11,921 allows the Federal Emergency Preparedness Agency to develop plans to establish control over the mechanisms of production and distribution of energy sources, wage salaries, credit, and the flow of money in U.S. financial institution. In any undefined national emergency, it also provides that when a state of emergency is declared by the President, Congress cannot review the action for 6 months. PDD 51 says never. Up on screen are photocopies of the Miami Herald, and this goes back into the 1980s when they had congressional hearings dealing with shadow government and martial law. There's the headline, The Secret Government. And it talks about secret summits, a plan to take over the government. And it shows the people that were in charge of the continuity of government, Dick Cheney and others. And then we have a congressional hearing where we have Congressman Jack Brooks and others during Iran-Contra bringing up the secret plans, and they're told by Congressman Inouye that that can't be discussed. It's a national security issue.
In the 1980s, the concentration camp program got a big boost.
Colonel North, in your work at the NSC, were you not assigned at one time to work on plans for the continuity of government in the event of a major disaster?
Mr. Chairman.
I believe that question touches upon a highly sensitive and classified area, so may I request that you not touch upon that, sir.
I was particularly concerned, Mr. Chairman, because I read in Miami papers and several others that there had been a plan developed by that same agency, a contingency plan in the event of emergency that would suspend the American Constitution. And I was deeply concerned about it and wondered if that was the area in which he had worked. I believe that it was.
May I most respectfully request that that matter not be touched upon at this stage. If we wish to get into this, I'm certain arrangements can be made for an executive session.
And tragically, the only member who got close was Jack Brooks, and he was stopped by the chairman. But the truth of the matter is that, yes, you do have those standby provisions, and the plans are there, and the statutory emergency plans are there, whereby you could, in the name of stopping terrorism, apprehend, invoke the military, and arrest Americans and hold them in detention camps.
Throughout history, criminals get control of governments. They use phony crises to enslave the public. And they're taking your pension funds, they're taking your money, they're raising the taxes on you, they are going to squeeze the daylights out of us all, and that's why they're geared up for martial law and to take the media over, because this is quite a gamble by the establishment. You know, we should have grand juries indicting the bankers and having them turn states' evidence against each other, and this whole criminal shadow government, national security state should be exposed. Everything it's engineered and bring in total tyranny and start arresting people for their speech. So it either goes into tyranny or into liberty. And believe me, folks, liberty is probably where it's going, because this tyranny is so horrible they've got planned. Let's go ahead and go to Congressman a year and a half ago on the Homeland Security Board wanting to know about PDD 51. Now, this fight went on for a year. The cover sheet of Presidential Decision Directive 51 stated the president's a dictator. Congress has no power during any emergency, including economic. So now Congress isn't involved in continuity of government when Congress is co-equal to the president and the courts. In fact, the Founding Fathers said Congress was above the courts and the president, but then later courts said, no, they're equal. Now they're saying they're not. Okay? Because it's harder for a dictator to take control in the Congress because there's 500 people. Separation of powers. The president is where your main dictator will come from, so it's the weakest. It follows the orders of Congress and then executes those orders. But then the chairman of the Homeland Security Committee said, I am co-equal with the president in national security. Let me see PDD 51. And they were told no. But the cover sheet alone states the president's a dictator. Then we see last year PDD 51 being executed, and members of Congress, Senator Inhofe and others, being told martial law will be declared if you don't hand total control and immunity over to the banks. And they followed orders and did it. So the martial law is now in place. And with that comes the FEMA camps. Will we get to that place? Not if we expose it. But we're already got our neck in the noose here. Is the executioner going to pull the lever? I don't know.
Let's continue with the congressman talking about PDD 51.
Most Americans would agree that it would be prudent to have a plan to provide for the continuity of government and the rule of law in case of a devastating terrorist attack or natural disaster. A plan to provide for the cooperation, the coordination, and continued functioning of all three branches of the government. The Bush administration tells us they have such a plan. They introduced a little sketchy public version that's clearly inadequate and doesn't really tell us what they have in mind. But they said, don't worry, there's a detailed classified version. But now they've denied the entire Homeland Security Committee of the United States House of Representatives access to their so-called detailed plan to provide for continuity of government. They say, trust us. Trust us, the people who brought us Katrina, to be competent in face of a disaster. Trust us, the people who brought us warrantless wiretapping and other excesses eroding our civil liberties. Trust us. Maybe the plan just really doesn't exist, and that's why they won't show it to us. I don't know. Or maybe there's something there that's outrageous. The American people need their elected representatives to review this plan for the continuity of government.
All right, that's Congressman Peter DeFazio. Now, that was a year and a half ago. Mr. DeFazio, the cover sheet says the president's a dictator and that Congress has no authority over continuity of government. That's why they're now saying Congress can't see it, because they're declaring and executing that power. Now, we fast forward a year plus to October 3rd, and here is Congressman Sherman, who we interviewed here on air, other congressmen we interviewed, and Senator Inhofe, saying they marched in and told them martial law will be declared if you don't do this. So we go from the 80s to where don't talk about the martial law plans and the FEMA camps. If you want to know about that, you can know about it in executive session, Congressman Jack Brooks, to, oh, Congress, you're not allowed to see the plans now. To Congress, do what we say, we're under martial law.
The only way they can pass this bill is by creating and sustaining a panic atmosphere. That atmosphere is not justified. Many of us were told in private conversations that if we voted against this bill on Monday, that the sky would fall, the market would drop 2,000 or 3,000 points the first day, another couple thousand the second day, and a few members were even told that there would be martial law in America if we voted no. That's what I call fear-mongering.
So we have the congressman on with us. We only have him for 5 minutes, 6 minutes. Congressman Brad Sherman, thank you for coming on, sir.
Good to be with you. You know, Wall Street used these panic tactics to get us to pass this $700 billion, well, what the bill really is $700 billion in unmarked bills. They said the market would drop by 4,000 points, blood would flow in the streets, and lions would be devouring children in the parks of Los Angeles. Now that the bill is passed, our economy is still going to be very bad.
The bailout money so far has been set aside to buy shares in banks, $250 billion, $40 billion to AIG, and $60 billion yet to be committed, leaving the remaining $350 billion for future use.
We've got to do everything we can to focus people's attention on this bill as it's carried out, because it allows Paulson to go up to Wall Street. He can give money to one firm. He cannot return phone calls from another firm. He can he can, if he wants, finds out which firms are donating to the 527 organizations, which take secret contributions and then make political advertising. He can look at the RNC donor list. He can do anything he wants.
Let's go back to what you said on the floor in the last 24 hours about members of Congress, and I've talked to some. They're afraid to even come on and talk about it, being told there will be martial law in America and we'll just do this with or without you if you don't do this. That is incredible. And I just had the former head of the Treasury on earlier, Dr. Paul Craig Roberts from Reagan, had a policy saying that this gives them economic martial law. Is that not terrorism? Is not the definition to threaten harm or carry out harm for a political aim, sir?
Well, but keep in mind, we passed the bill, and I'm told the market is down.
Sir, here's the $64 million question. You and other members of Congress say, yeah, well, there were some people threatening martial law, but we don't think they meant it. They were just trying to fearmonger, which I call terrorism, into it. That's a huge issue. Specifically, sir, we need to know names. Who told you that they were told that martial law and blood in the streets, as you said, would happen?
Private conversations between members on the floor, you really can't reveal without the permission of the other party.
I understand, but were there arm twisters coming up, or were they scared? I mean, how was it said specifically?
What we have to do is expose those circumstances where we're bailing out a particular firm, and how many of the executives at that firm are continuing to make $1 million a year, $5 million a year, $20 million a year. There's going to be a lot of information that is not public, and it's going to take investigative reporters to find out things that congressmen can't find out and that the public is not going to be aware of. I have to go right now, but it's been a pleasure being with you.
Somebody in D.C. was feeding you guys quite a story prior to the bailout, a story that if we didn't do this, we were going to see something on the scale of the Depression. There were people that were talking about, martial law being instituted, civil unrest, all this kind of stuff. Who was feeding you this information?
That's Henry Paulson. We had a conference call early on. It was on a Friday, I think a week and a half before the vote on October 1st. So it would have been the middle, 19th of September, we had a conference call. In this conference call, and I guess there's no reason for me not to repeat what he said, but he painted this picture you just described. He said, this is serious. This is the most serious thing that we face. It's going to be far worse than the Great Depression of the 30s. And all these things, he was very descriptive of exactly what would happen if we didn't buy out these toxic assets, which he abandoned the day after he got the money.
Okay, here's our top story. Obama signed this 7 days ago on January 11th, 2010. And I spent a few days reading over it, checking the U.S. code, checking the laws that it mentions, and it ties into Presidential Decision Directive 51, signed by Bush. And remember, Congress wanted to get the full Presidential Decision Directive and accompanying executive order.
Would be prudent to have a plan to provide for the continuity of government and the rule of law in case of a devastating terrorist attack. The Bush administration tells us they have such a plan. But now they've denied the entire Homeland Security Committee of the United States House of Representatives.
And Bush declared national security and wouldn't even let Homeland Security Committee, which is supposedly co-equal with the president, wouldn't even let them have access to it. But the cover sheet stated that for any emergency, including economic, anywhere in the world, that the executive is over the legislative and judicial, over the courts, over the Congress, which is unconstitutional. It's supposed to have separation of powers. The people aren't supposed to be divided, what the government always tries to do. The government's supposed to be divided so that you can't ever get a dictatorship. Well, this is what the founders said. This is what America is. It's why we love the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. So President Bush signed this national security directive. And it says the continuity of government program will enhance the credibility of our national security posture and enable more rapid, effective response and recovery. And it goes on. The catastrophic emergency means any incident, regardless of location in the world, that results in extraordinary levels of mass casualties, damages, or disruption severely affecting the U.S. population, infrastructure, environment, economy, or government functions. And under this, the president is over the governors, he's over the legislatures of the states, he's over the Congress, and Congress has no authority. And then Congress asked for the full secret document, and it's still classified to this day. Obama has continued breaking his promise of transparency and has not released the full text of this, another memorandum. Connected into this is his new announcement. His new announcement. He is creating, with this executive order titled Establishment of the Council of Governors, it says here in the document that they are taking the governors, the states, the police forces, everything under the control of NORTHCOM, that's the Pentagon, and Homeland Security. But don't worry, the states have their say. The president is going to appoint the 10 members. 5 governors from the Republican and 5 governors from the Democrats. Kind of like Bush called the 9/11 Commission independent when he appointed it, or Janet Reno appointed her own Waco investigation team. This would be like Hitler appointing his own Nuremberg judges. I mean, or Al Capone at his own court case. I mean, it's just absolutely ridiculous. And there it is at whitehouse.gov, the executive order for anyone that wishes to see that for themselves. Separately, I have the Rand Corporation's plan that they put out last year. And this plan, the Stability Police Force of the United States, justification, options for creating U.S. capabilities. This has already been implemented covertly in the last 15 years. But now they're just being open about it. And it has all the maps here of how Stability Police Force headquarters to run your local city. They have systems for medium-sized police forces, large police forces. They have the Stability Unit for small police units. Again, Communist Russia had this. Communist China has this. Russian news is freaking out, saying America gets its own Politburo. On the Richter scale of tyranny, this is about a 10. And it goes back, because now all these conservative groups are going, oh my gosh, it's martial law. Oh my gosh, Obama's having a big power grab. And yes, he is. But Obama is just the teleprompter reading minion or frontman, just like Bush was. He's just better than Bush was at it. It is the system that's doing this. Big central banks threatened martial law in early October of 2008. Give the trillions, not 700 billion, but trillions of dollars. The overriding issue is we are under martial law right now. In 1986, under Rex 84, they opened 12 secret Army camps to test if they could keep them secret while they held federal. Now they hold state prisoners as well. Federal prisoners would then be given a few years off their sentence if they agreed to not tell family about it and to go to the labor camps. It is a labor camp, and under the revised military rules, it allows any U.S. citizens to be put in it under forced labor. Here is the Civilian Inmate Labor Camp Program, Army Regulation 210-35. It's exactly 30 pages long. I suggest you Google Civilian Inmate Labor Camp Program. Even if you don't have a computer, go to the library. This is important. Now, this is the big piece of news. This is to establish setting up prison labor camps, negotiations with correctional systems representatives to establish prison camps, governing criteria, civilian inmate labor camps, policy statement, governing provisions for operating civilian inmate prison camps on Army installations, procedures for establishing a civilian inmate prison camp on Army installations, infrastructure, inter-service, interagency, and interdepartmental support agreements, working with local police at the FEMA camps. In 2002, I published my book, Descent into Tyranny. I've been covering it since 97 when it was declassified, but I put it in my book, Descent into Tyranny. This sucker was set up in 1986 at 12 camps. It's since doubled to 24. And from 86 to 97, secretly at labor camps, U.S. citizens, non-military prisoners, were worked on FEMA camps. Now, this was beta testing. They would tell them, you'll be given leniency and only serve half your sentence if you agree to labor. The minute you don't, you'll be sent back on these military bases, but you can't tell anybody national security. See, they were testing, can we keep camp secret from local police or get them to work with us? Can we keep camp secret from the media? So for 11 years, they kept this sucker secret. Reagan, Bush, Clinton. And then Clinton declassifies it and says it's a good thing in 97, and they double the number. We had secret copies of this when I first got on air in about 95, 96, with just the cover sheet of it, and people made fun of us and didn't believe it. Then it was declassified. This is from Army.mil. So here it is, the big kahuna. This is just one section of these, training the troops, training the infrastructure, creating the larger cadres to expand the archipelago of gulags. New legislation authorizes FEMA camps in the United States. And it says 6 major camps across the country with hundreds of sub-region camps. Now, if you watch my films and read the documents we put out, that's exactly what we said the camps are and how they operate, because we reverse engineered all this. The camps are already built. It's when they want to openly announce they're doing it that they then pass a law. And they say, oh, all these shut down military bases that they've been keeping refurbished and putting barbed wire facing in and putting in showers and bunks, and we knew that those were to be the FEMA camps, because in the FEMA documents and the congressional leaks and from people that worked at the camps, we knew, and we would list the camps. Then we noticed when it was declassified in 97 that the very camps that had been, quote, decommissioned under the base closure, because they'd said back in the 80s under Rex 84 they were going to use the camps in Congress. So we said, you want to know where the camps are? They're old military bases, and they're old POW camps from Italians, Germans, and Japanese. Guess what's in here? Guess what's in the bill? They've reintroduced the National Compulsory Service under H.R. 1444. It says for mandatory national service. Defense Department announces civilian expeditionary workforce in Pentagon Directive 1404.10. It says management retains the authority to direct and assign civilian employees either voluntarily or involuntarily or on an unexpected basis to accomplish DOD mission. So, see, they're saying they're going to create a 7 million man. That was in the New York Times. The Congress said. I kept saying 1 million because Obama said as big as our army, as big as the military. That'd be 1 million people. They say 7 million now, and that they're going to draft you into this, and they'll decide, no more draft boards, if you stay here or if you go overseas. But this just broke. I just showed you the earlier terror training manual saying those that talk about the Constitution are terrorists and are a danger to police, those that are in Second Amendment groups. Here is the MIAC strategic report, and this is 2/2009, the modern militia movement. And they mix in here people that believe there's 9 FEMA regions, people that believe there's a NAPTA superhighway, and they show the official NAPTA superhighway map the government put out. Doesn't exist. Those that don't want RFID chips being planted with them, and they mix it in then with white supremacists and others, and they say, we want you to understand the terrorist symbols. It's don't tread on me flag of the Founding Fathers. You know, the flag of the Founding Fathers, all of it. We're going to go over this. This is amazing. They say in there that there is, no such thing as a New World Order banking takeover, as hundreds of newspapers a day say there will be a new bank of the world that you pay carbon taxes to. It just doesn't exist. You're insane terrorist if you believe it. I remember my grandfathers, and it was normal just when you were at the dinner table, or even my dad, to explain how governments work and how history worked, and they taught the military. You don't have the military on the streets, and we're here to defend the Constitution, Bill of Rights, not what the president says if it violates that. And we've gone from that now to a strategic report, 2/2009, the modern militia movement. And then they mix gun owner groups, pro-gun groups in with white supremacists. They say those that believe in a new world order. These theories vary, but most always involve a globalist dictatorship. They show, and I'm putting on screen right now, official North American Union SPP maps that have been on CNN of how they're going to have every major highway be an international toll road from Mexico up into the deep north of Canada. And they just say it doesn't exist. These people are insane. I mean, this is a high level of PSYOP, isn't it, Gerald Celente?
Well, that's the way they always do things. They lump them all together, and it's one size fits all. I have a question. Do you believe that the military will fire on its people?
They're going to stage riots, and then it's going to look like, oh, they stopped the riots. It's reasonable to set the precedent. Like, oh, we do have FEMA camps for medical care and where you can stay. The troops are here to help at car wrecks. That's how they're rolling it out. And I believe that, I think the way they're going to manipulate the military, I think a lot of them are going to fire on U.S. citizens.
Because that's a question we're going to pose in the Trends Journal in the next edition. And I happen to agree with you They'll stage riots. We always see these people that they call anarchists that always have black, always have dressed in black and have masks on.
They've been caught being police in sorry, go ahead.
No, exactly. No, I agree with you. And I think that they are going to fire on the people, unfortunately.
No, don't shoot me, please! Don't shoot me! I haven't done anything! Don't shoot!
In this training manual that's going out to police everywhere in the country, it has a "Don't Tread on Me" flag. It shows America, freedom to fascism, and the film Zeitgeist in it. We just showed that, and shows it next to the Turner Diaries, which was a white supremacist thing about killing police. So see how they do guilt by association. I mean, this is just off the charts, and this was sent to me by the Missouri Information Analyst Center. A police officer sent it to me. That's where they got it from. And I've seen these in Texas versions and others. It's the same thing, but they're updating it. I mean, how do they say none of this exists and then mix in mainstream things that are happening with white supremacists and tell police that people are dangerous if they're into this?
You're watching Police State 4, The Rise of FEMA. I wanted to take a little break out to explain the history of the Police State documentary films. In 1999, in 2000 and 2001, I made the seminal Police State films that were a viral success on the web and on VHS and DVD. Fast forward 8 years later, it's all come true. Not because I have a crystal ball, but because I'm looking at government documents, I'm looking at the facts, I'm looking at their own white papers. If we can expose the FEMA camps and the executive orders and the shadow government, their system will fail. I've made the film, Police State 4. It's now up to you to get it out to everyone you know. And yes, we need your support. We offer and promote the fact that they're free on YouTube, Google, and thousands of other video sites. We put them out for free. But we do ask you to give us the seed money, the support to run our websites, to do the syndicated radio show, and to make future films. So if you want this documentary in the best quality available and to have the expanded extras, please visit Infowars.com and purchase Police State 4, The Rise of FEMA. You can call toll-free, 888-253-3139. You can visit Infowars.com or PrisonPlanet.com. If it hasn't been blocked in your country yet, many have. You can also write to us at Infowars, P.O. Box 19549, Austin, Texas 78760. PrisonPlanet.tv is a better tool than ever in the info war. Over 6 years of my radio and TV shows, all my films in super high quality, my book, Paul Watson's book, all there, 15 cents a day. Your support of PrisonPlanet.tv empowers the resistance to unlock minds worldwide. The destiny of Police State 4, The Rise of FEMA is in your hands. I'm asking all of you to have public viewings, to make copies, and to give to everyone you know. The power of humanity and the human spirit is unstoppable if you'll simply unleash it, if you'll simply take action and turn it loose. I salute you all.
Good evening, my fellow Americans. We have been compelled to create a permanent armaments industry of vast proportions. We annually spend on military security alone more than the net income of all United States corporations. We recognize the imperative need for this development, yet we must not fail to comprehend its grave implications. Our toil, resources, and livelihood are all involved. So is the very structure of our society. In the councils of government, we must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex. The potential for the disastrous rise of misplaced power exists and will persist. We must never let the weight of this combination endanger our liberties or democratic processes. Only an alert and knowledgeable citizen can compel the proper meshing of the huge industrial and military machinery of defense, the prospect of domination of the nation's coffers by federal employment, project allocations, and the power of money is ever present and is gravely to be regarded. We must also be alert to the equal and opposite danger that public policy could itself become the captive of a scientific, technological elite. We cannot mortgage the material assets of our grandchildren without risking the loss also of their political and spiritual heritage.
Well, I think terrorism is being practiced on the residents of the city of Oakland because many of the retired teachers, retired military people have informed me that they understand what's going on, and it's not anything that relates to humanitarian training whatsoever. This is a psychological, as we in the research community say, this is a psyops. They're preparing people for what is coming, not what is being presented today.
So you're saying they're preparing people to accept it with incrementalism?
That is correct. Like the old frog example. You know, you put the frog in the water and you just gradually continue to raise the heat on the water until the frog is cooked. And that's the way it works. The problem is that the local people in general, just will not take their heads out of the sand. I'm going to tell everyone I can, listen, we have a serious problem.
And it's called a police state.
It's called a police state.
Let's go ahead and get to this. I mean, you want to see, you know, what goes with FEMA camps like a horse and carriage. Troops, militarized police, training with the Army to take over your cities and towns. Let's go ahead and play this YouTube clip, Martial Law is Coming, from News 7 at 11.
The scenario was a fake, but the pepper spray and billy clubs used to break up this riot were definitely real. Good evening, I'm Miranda Stevens. Whether it's terrorism, riots, or any major disaster, local agencies will be the first to respond. That's why Roanoke City wants its disaster training to be as real as possible. Jeremy Butterfield has more.
It's supposed to look like a riot, and the scene at William Fleming High School had all the elements.
I'm one of the rioters that the guard and the police force had to take down and arrest, and did very successfully.
In this scenario, everyone has a role to play. The rioters were ready to fight back as Roanoke Police, Roanoke Fire, local National Guard troops, and members of the Virginia Defense Force secured perimeters and moved in to make the arrests.
Prior to 9/11, these organizations couldn't communicate and did not work together. They worked to support each other, but not together. And with the recent events of the last 3 to 5 years, we've become very good at working together, which is very important.
Of course, these weren't real rioters. The rebels in T-shirts were all members of one of the participating agencies, but you couldn't tell that during the exercise. If you weren't protected by an orange vest signifying you as an observer, you were in danger of being hit by eggs, bottles, billy clubs, or even the occasional well-placed round from a sniper.
We try to make this very real, give a real feel to it. We had the fire department provided some live burning out here, so we had smoke, flames, objects being thrown, a lot of chaos. There's going to be a lot of chaos in a civil disturbance situation, and that's what we want to try to incorporate as much as possible.
Teamwork plays a major role. Mountain Police had to coordinate with the fire department, while National Guard troops marched in formation toward the rioters. Without cooperation throughout all the agencies, the rioters would have quickly taken control.
I think everybody learned a little bit. Mistakes are made, but we'd rather make those mistakes here than in a real situation.
This was the 4th year the agencies have participated in this drill, and organizers say the old adage, practice makes perfect, certainly holds true in the face of disaster.
And then, see, you talk about this, and mainstream writes articles about me like I'm crazy, making up troops and troop deployments when it's the Army Times, the Army War College, hundreds of newspapers have announced it, and then I say, hey, that's tyranny, and they go, shut up, Jones, doesn't exist. InfoWars story on illegal Tennessee checkpoint prompts action by governor. Friday, listeners pointed out local news saying the Army was going to be out, regular Army running checkpoints, searching citizens with police. The governor got called, our listeners called.
The Whiteville Police Department had plans to conduct a seatbelt checkpoint on Saturday, April 4th at Highway 64 within the city limits of Whiteville. The checkpoint was planned to be in conjunction with Homeland Security and the 251st Military Police in Bolivar. After learning about this, I contacted Representative Johnny Shaw, who represents that area, ask you about this. Representative Shaw, you looked into this, and can you tell me what you've learned and where this stands now?
I can. Actually, this has been canceled. Some calls were made to the governor's office about this on earlier today, this Friday, and of course the governor just simply said, I don't need another headache. It was a bad idea in the first place. I mean, during this climate, in this day and time which we live, can you imagine the Army stopping you for a seatbelt check,
We'll follow up with you on that, sir, and find out what steps are taken to protect, to see that something like this the public is notified in the future.
Definitely we will, because the public should have been notified if it was going to happen, and I'm going to make sure that I call all of the local authorities and ask them not to do this anymore, but if they should even attempt to make sure that they contact people like myself and make sure that people are notified as to what is going to happen.
Representative John Shaw just joins us for a few minutes, representative from Tennessee, District 80. Sir, thank you for coming on with us.
Sure, you're welcome. Thank you for having me, Alex.
You bet. Now, we played the clip earlier of you on a local news station talking about Army checkpoints. The governor found out, thanks to you and others, and canceled it. Can you just, in a nutshell, tell us exactly, specifically, what was going on?
Yes, I can. First of all, I have got to check. Now, I don't have concrete facts, but I don't think the military has, first of all, any jurisdiction to be checking seatbelts. When you look at the fact of a military unit being out, your daughter, my wife, or someone driving through a roadblock with all of these local officials, the Army and everybody out there, I think it's just going to scare people to death. I think our local and state officials have the staff when needed to check seatbelts, to do a seatbelt check without the Army getting involved. And I just don't think it's a good idea.
Well, obviously, sir, I don't know if you've heard, but yes, it still violates posse comitatus. They haven't completely removed that 1878 law. We know in Mexico and communist China they have troops on the streets. This is a sign of a banana republic, of a third world police state, so that we don't want that. But the larger issue here is that they've announced Homeland Security wants to put 20,000 regular Army troops to patrol America. The Naval War College, the Army War College has said their new job will be engaging us, combat with the American people to stop an insurrection against the banks. So, A, are you aware of that? B, can you tell us specifically what units, why the Army was going to be out running checkpoints?
Well, I got this news late on Friday, and when I got the news, I immediately jumped on it to try to call some local authorities that I knew first to see what was going on. And when I made the call, I found out at that point in time that the governor had already made the decision to cancel this, and which I was very proud of that. But I am not aware of Homeland Security doing this. I did hear that they would be involved in this roadblock issue on last Friday, but I am not aware of the other part of the question that you asked.
Okay, specifically, though, when you talk to the local authorities, whose idea, where did it come from that regular Army is going to be out running checkpoints? I mean, a checkpoint is unconstitutional if you don't have warrants and it's random for the police to do. Now the Army? I mean, again, sir, this is suddenly happening everywhere. This is part of a larger plan. So we as detectives are asking you, any other little tidbits you've got about who was behind this?
Well, and I don't know, Alex. I can't answer that question other than the fact that it was going to take place in a little area of my district in a town called Whiteville, Tennessee, which would lead me to believe or to assume that the chief of police there was the one who orchestrated this idea.
Was the state involved?
Not to my knowledge at all.
Okay, so the governor had to say no. So this is what we always see. The Army then probably approached some locals as part of their covert acclimation program. And State Representative Johnny Shaw, we appreciate you speaking out against this. We appreciate the governor saying no to this. Can you, just in closing, speak to why you were concerned about it and against it?
Well, again, I was concerned because I think in this economic climate, or in this climate that we are in, well, can you imagine your wife, your daughter, my wife or daughter, even son driving up to a checkpoint with Homeland Security, the military police, the state police, if they were involved, and then, of course, all of your local authorities, it's going to make someone think something bad has happened in the community, and I just don't think this is a good idea. I think it would have been a scare tactic that would have been hard for some of our citizens to get over, or maybe some of our senior citizens, and I'm totally against this kind of a tactic, and I'm going to do my best as a state representative to see that this does not happen again in my district and hopefully nowhere in the state of Tennessee.
Now, this is being done to acclimate the public so they don't panic when troops take over the city hall, the county, the state. This is high treason. And Obama has taken all these new powers that Bush claimed and has expanded them day one. And suddenly the left that was against it isn't saying a thing. So that's part of the preparation. Guardsmen to conduct urban training at Arcadia in April. This is going on scaled back now. It says in this article, going door to door, asking if they can search homes looking for weapons. And they practice raiding the local gun shop. And this is for domestic operations. Lieutenant Colonel, I really appreciate you coming on such short notice, sir.
My pleasure. Thanks for the invitation.
You bet. I saw this article out of the Daily Times Herald in Carroll, Iowa. Have you seen that?
I sure have.
And it's telling us about an urban warfare drill to be held in several towns. Can you tell us about that?
Sure. It's actually a planned training event to provide our soldiers with greater proficiency at what we call cordon and search, which is a mission that, just for a little background, we've deployed nearly 13,000 members of the Iowa National Guard in the global war on terror. And the vast majority of those have been in Iraq and Afghanistan. And one of the missions that they perform in Iraq and Afghanistan on multiple occasions is cordon and search, where basically you are trying to get to an area, cordon it off to make sure everything's safe, and then actually search for caches of weapons or other kinds of contraband which could harm American forces and other
like Fallujah, what we saw in Fallujah.
Mm-hmm. Correct. Exactly. So because of where we're located in Iowa, there are no active duty bases in Iowa, so we kind of have to create our own urban training environments. So the plan on this particular training event was to actually use a small town of about 450 people. The town has actually kind of adopted the unit, which is called Company A, 1st Battalion, 168th Infantry, and they were more than willing to participate in the exercise.
Going through this article, I mean, explaining exactly what they're going to do door to door with the houses, what the checkpoints are going to be simulating.
Sure. When you're talking about cordon and search operations, you've got several different rings of security that you've got to provide in a particular area. And then it's important that people are treated respectfully as you go house to house, as you're looking for certain items, particularly in our experience in Afghanistan and Iraq, looking for weapon caches, whether those have AK-47s, RPGs, rocket-propelled grenades, that is, any kind of ammunition or any kind of improvised explosive devices, et cetera, et cetera. And our job, when we go on a cordon search, is to locate those kinds of items. And then there might also be persons of interest that we're interested in that coalition forces want to talk to or apprehend.
Well, let's just boil it down to this. I have video of Army and Marines with role players screaming, "I'm an American, please don't put me in the camp," and the military training to confiscate their firearms. I mean, certainly you've heard the Army Times and the new directive from Secretary of Defense Robert Gates that they will use the National Guard under federal control for civil insurrection. Are you saying you're not aware of that?
No, I'm certainly aware of that, absolutely. But I think you have to look at the role of the National Guard historically. Is that historically we are used in states for disasters overwhelmingly. And our job is to, number one, be ready for our mission federally, which is to go to war. And number two is to help our fellow citizens here in the United States of America. Those
But
are
the Army
things that we prepare for and train for.
The Army War College 3 weeks ago issued a report saying they're shifting a lot of their focus to engaging the American people and directives on engagement with the American people under NORTHCOM.
Well, you got to remember that the National Guard, 99% of the time, if you're talking about peacetime, belongs to the state in which they are located. Only on occasion do they become federalized. One of those examples, of course, is being mobilized and deployed to go to war or peacekeeping or other kinds of federalized missions. But other than that, the National Guard generally in peacetime belongs to the governor of that state.
Well, you're pretty informed on all these issues. Obviously, you're right in the middle of it. Did you hear about the mainstream news articles about Marines in California and other places helping at DWI checkpoints with citizens? Would that violate posse comitatus?
I'm not aware of that. With respect to active duty military, that's called Title 10 when you're on active duty, and they're not allowed to participate in certain kinds of operations under the Posse Comitatus Act.
Does that sound like freedom to you all over the country to have the National Guard at big events like at the Kentucky Derby and the Super Bowl searching bags?
Well, I think if you're talking about keeping Americans safe, it's our job to do whatever we can to help them with that. And if our job happens to be to detect weapons of mass destruction or other kinds of things that could harm a great deal of people, that's what we do.
Now, here's your Pentagon Channel report.
The Kentucky National Guard was part of the massive security force required for this weekend's Kentucky Derby. Officials say that 360 Guard members were on hand at Churchill Downs to help support law enforcement efforts for the first leg of horse racing's Triple Crown. Now, the troops took care of crowd and traffic control, provided 3 choppers and crews for aviation support. Officials at the track said that more than 150,000 fans turned out for the race. Police only had to make 44 arrests.
International media, government staffers, and protesters.
Thousands of them, all waiting for the G20 summit to begin.
World leaders arriving in Pittsburgh for the G20 summit are finding a city on lockdown and already hit by violence.
By order of the City of Pittsburgh Chief Police, I hereby declare this to be an unlawful assembly. I order all those assembled to immediately disperse.
The G20 basically represent the largest nations which participate in the Western banking cartel, which I feel is behind a lot of the pain, anguish, and misery that exists in our world today.
They would like to come up with one central bank for the world to replace the dollar standard, and also have international regulation, you know, a massive expansion of the WTO regulations into the financial markets.
You must leave the immediate vicinity. If you remain in this immediate vicinity, you will be in violation of the Pennsylvania Crimes Code, no matter what your purpose is.
It's hard that it's setting up as like a us versus them when we're all in the same class. We're in it together, and they're protecting the interests of the world's billionaires. Anytime I've been on a march or anytime I've been arrested, it has been peaceful on our side. It's the state are the ones that cause the violence.
You must leave. If you do not disperse, you may be arrested and or subject to other police action. Other police action may include actual physical removal, the use of riot control agents and or less lethal munitions.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is breaking news. Do you know why my crew is not live with us right now, why they were out of contact? They are under sustained LRAD sound cannon attack. You know, they rolled these out at tea parties in California and other places. First time I saw them was 2004 in New York. They have the National Guard engaging American citizens right now with deadly acoustic weapons that damage the middle ear. This is happening right now in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, while the G20 in mainstream news is getting rid of the dollar, bringing in world government against everybody right now. Listen, this is such a police state there that they tried to talk to the military and talk to a spokesman last night. Defense Link put a press release out, and they said, no, we're not going to talk to you, get out of here. Then they got their license number, had the police pose as Alamo rental car people from the county there, Allegheny County in Pennsylvania. They called them and said, oh, your car's got no brakes, bring it in. And they said, well, we're in the coordinate G20, we're news reporters, we can't get out till tomorrow. And they said, well, that's fine, because I'm a police officer with the Army and FBI, and you've all been put on terror list, and your life's over, boy, and we know you're a terrorist, and you were sneaking around the military base and ran. All lies.
Thank you very much. Okay, so I just went over. They're going to have a guy come out and talk to us, or they said they'll get us a number to contact. He said the PAO. This is probably him right here.
every 30 seconds, saying disperse, disperse. We've got them. Let's go to live now. Here they are from Pittsburgh. G20 under attack.
Yeah, we're on 33rd and Liberty, and we just passed they had the street blocked off, and they were using the sonic weapon on us. They were using it to broadcast, and then they would ramp up the signal for a brief second to let them know that they could, blow some eardrums out. It got pretty loud.
I hereby declare this to be an unlawful assembly. I order all other police actual physical removal, the use of riot control.
Everybody dispersed, though, when that started happening. The one group, the largest group, went through an alleyway. They're driving right past me right now.
Get them on tape.
With the gun. They had two of them. They were using them to broadcast messages in Spanish and English. That's the engine right now. You can hear it passing me. And there's a guy sitting on top. The police I'm seeing now are in full riot gear.
Are they the police, though, wearing the National Guard bottoms?
It looks like Border Patrol. I've seen Border Patrol here, too. They have the dark green Border Patrol uniforms.
So federal police in the middle of Pennsylvania.
I find it very ironic that it's happening on Liberty Avenue. Very ironic.
Burmis, I want to be clear about this. They were shooting you guys with this. Douglas was saying it was hurting. What was this like?
The decibel level was very, very high. One moment I was covering the front of the protest. The next moment my eardrums were blasting. And as that happened, I basically turned around, saw about 40 riot police assisted by military, and I ran up and I got all the footage I could. Every once in a while I'd have to take
There you go, assisted by military. So this is the military attacking the American people, because in every news article I see, they're together. So that's key for the article Watson's doing. The military was with them.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they were in military fatigues. SWAT is also here. I got a good shot of one of the military personnel whoing on top of the Pittsburgh paddy wagon. Basically, most of the Humvees in the military were cordoning off at checkpoints on Main Street in the main city of Pittsburgh. They were in full military fatigues. I mean, these weren't just the pants. They were the tops. There's no doubt that there's military here, Alex. I approached them. I asked them what their mission was.
What's the mission? You can't say? Sir, what would you have to say to critics that say this is a violation of posse comitatus?
I'd say that you need to talk to my PA.
You know what posse comitatus is? No. No? Separation of military and police? Be the first military guy to tell me what it is. I've asked about a dozen today. No, but nothing, right?
And it was the standard boilerplate answer of, we're just following orders.
We're just here to support law enforcement. That's all we know.
We're here to protect United States citizens' rights to peaceful protest.
Unbelievable. Global leaders meeting openly in mainstream news to get rid of the dollar and bring in, quote, global governance. This is the end of our country, and the police and the military are acting like people that don't like it are pure scum and terrorists because the DHS has trained them to do that.
Here come the anarchist staging. Here they come right now. They just grabbed the dumpster. They're flipping it over.
Video it.
I got it on tape right now.
Oh, I don't want to put you in danger, Jason, but if you follow that stinking Fed, is it a big guy?
All right, it was 3 people, and of course they had masks on, Alex.
Briefly, tell folks about last night. You guys pull up to the gate. You asked to talk to the public information officer. They called the police and lied and said that you were sneaking around.
Yes, sir. How's it going? We were responding to a news story that the National Guard was going to be masked to go into Pittsburgh. And can we get a comment on that?
Sorry, we can't make any comments, sir.
Do you have a press guy we can talk to?
Call PAO.
We then pulled off to the side of the road where they instructed us to. We waited around 15 or 20 minutes. A representative came back. Immediately, he was hostile towards us. He did not like our credentials.
Hey, guys.
Hey, good evening, sir.
What's up? Look how you're
How you doing? My name's Rob.
Okay.
We're out of Austin, Texas, Channel 10.
Okay, can I see your credentials?
We tried to get as much information as we could. He refused to answer our questions. So then Rob asked him for his information and where we could contact him tomorrow if we could get a word with him. He then gave it, and we left.
Speech, freelance reporter.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so what are you looking for?
Well, we're following up on a report that we got, and it's that we read. It said there's 2,500 troops that are going to be deployed into Pittsburgh for the G20 for security.
Once again, do you have? I'd like to talk to your editor. I'm more than